Street of Chance was a 1942 crime noir mystery film starring Burgess Meredith and Claire Trevor. It featured the theme of a man with amnesia from a head injury trying to solve the mystery of who he was and was he guilty of murder? Well, this was an enjoyable crime story, and I'll summarize the film and then offer some closing thoughts. The film opens up with Burgess Meredith, the actor who played Mickey from Rocky fame, but much younger here, and he's the character Frank. Almost right away, he's the victim of a head injury from some falling debris at a construction site. And when he comes to, he kind of gets his bearing, but he heads to what he thinks is his home, but it actually isn't. And the girl that he's expecting to see isn't there. And what is going on? Well, he goes and finds the character Virginia, played by actress Louise Platt, who looks shocked to see him. Now, he's thinking that he had just kissed her goodbye only that morning, but she tells him that it's been over a year since she last saw him. But she warms up to him and tells him it, must be one of those amnesia things, like happen in these old crime films all the time. And then everything is basically back to normal again with them, and she tucks him into bed. Well, the next day, he heads into the city to go to work. He goes to this tall office building, and on the way, he gets a suspicious look from a guy who seems to be following him. But he goes in and he meets with the manager, Mr. Clark, played by actor Gladden James, and pretty much gets right back to his old job again. And, maybe that's a little improbable after a year away to just show up and go back to work, but whatever, it's all good. But he starts getting these weird memory flashbacks of faces, and something is just not right here. Now, after work, heading home, he's pursued by Joe Marucci, who's played by actor Sheldon Leonard. And getting into a cab, he says, "Just go, don't stop." But this Joe guy is after him, and he is hammering at the glass of the cab. Really wants to get him, but he manages to get away. He gets home and has dinner with his sweetie. Now, she'd like to go for a walk outside, but he's just nervous and wants to stay. And it's here that he does this cool effect where he looks out the window and he sees a flashback sequence in the window. It's pretty cool, actually. Well, a call comes in from the office saying that someone was asking for him, but who could it be? Later that night, he can't sleep, and he goes to look out the window, and he sees some suspicious-looking guys outside, standing around a car. So he and Virginia make a run for it. They sneak away, but for her safety, he sends her off to stay with her parents. And the next day, he does some walking alone while his voiceover ponders, "Who am I? What's going on?" And he figures that maybe having a beer might help jog his memory because, in these old movies, booze has healing abilities and can help restore your memory. So he goes in for a cold one, but he's soon interrupted by the excitement. I think there's a fire that was going on. And while he's out there with the spectators, he's spotted by character Ruth Dillon, who's played by the lovely actress Claire Trevor, who's very much like, "What are you doing out here in public where people can see you?" So she brings him in to her apartment, and she is just overjoyed to see him. And of course, he doesn't really recognize her. He's still got the amnesia thing going on. But she is thrilled. The ladies really seem to fawn over Burgess Meredith, which is probably one of the weirdest things I've ever said on this channel. But anyhow, she hugs him and tells him that Joe Marucci is out looking for him. This was the guy chasing him earlier. But Frank, he just wants to get to the bottom of this mystery, so he kind of plays along with his character, asking a lot of questions and, things like, how long has it been since they were last together? It was only a week, she says. And since there's nothing to eat in her apartment, she leaves to go get some food, and on the way, drops that his last name is Nearing. So the mystery slowly unfolds. Well, while she's gone, he starts going through her stuff and finds a newspaper saying headlines like, "The Diedrich killer is still at large," and that he is actually the suspect. Well, Ruth heads back with some bags of food and has a brief run-in with that suspicious Marucci character and gets around him, dodges him, gets back in the apartment, and shuts the door. Now, back together, he asks if she thinks that he was the murderer. And of course she doesn't. She believes in him. He tells her he wants to solve this mystery and find the real killers. Usually that's how that goes in these amnesia-themed pictures. Anyhow, Frank is convinced he's innocent, and he insists that he and Ruth go to this Diedrich estate to look around for evidence and clues, maybe something that'll kind of shake his memory. So they go to this old, shadowy mansion and they look around with the flashlights. It's here that Frank finds an old woman. She's played here by actress Adeline DeWalt Reynolds, and he figures out that she's mute but can communicate with her through the blinking of the eyes. One blink yes, two blinks no, that sort of thing, to answer his questions about the murder and the mystery. But soon the Diedrich couple arrive home, and they seem suspicious that something is going on. They're played here by Jerome Cohen and Frida Inescourt. Now, Ruth used to work for them as a servant, so when they see her there, it's not too alarming, and she just makes excuses, and she covers for Frank, who hides. When he gets the chance, though, Frank continues to try to communicate with Grandma Diedrich to try to solve the mystery, and with very little time left to the film, I'll leave the review here, spoiler-free, so you can go check out the ending for yourself. So some closing thoughts on the movie Street of Chance. It was produced by Paramount Pictures, and it was directed by Jack Hively, and adapted to a screenplay by Garrett Fort. And it's based on the novel The Black Curtain, which was written by Cornell Woolrich. And I thought this was a fine amnesia-themed crime film. Amnesia is always a fun, if totally implausible device in these old movies. Be it Gregory Peck in Hitchcock's Spellbound, or, say, Edmund O'Brien in Man in the Dark. There's usually a mystery to be solved by the guy with amnesia, and he's just trying to figure out, who am I and what happened? And there's usually a beautiful and sympathetic woman who shows up to help out on the way. And plenty of criminal characters, too. I think they're a lot of fun, but yeah, this film was definitely some implausible situations, but it's all good. And I think this is the first film I've ever reviewed on my channel with young Burgess Meredith. And I'll come right out and say it, that he's an actor I only know primarily as Mickey from the Rocky films. Rock, you're a bum. Or as the Penguin from the classic Batman series, or even the original Twilight Zone. Episodes like Time Enough at Last. So it was really a treat to watch him here as a younger actor. And, even younger, he still has sort of that gruff voice and the tough appearance that actually make him a very great fit for a crime film like this. And even though I stick to films of the 40s and 50s era, I might have to do a review of Rocky one of these days. Technically, it is an old movie, and it happens just to be one of my favorite films ever. It's right up there with Casablanca and The Seven Samurai, so who knows, maybe one day I'll throw that on the channel. It was oddly coincidental that I picked this film not knowing that Claire Trevor was in it, as my last review was, curiously enough, Key Largo, in which she plays a memorable role there as the Moll. I think Moll is the word for gangster girlfriend. I could be wrong, but she was, the Moll to Edward G. Robinson's character. And anyhow, in this film, she does a fine job as a supportive yet suspicious girlfriend. And watch out for that twist ending. Now, while I was reading some of the background of this film and some of the actors in the film, I thought that Adeline DeWalt Reynolds, who plays the old grandma who can't speak, had a very interesting backstory. Now, if the Internet Movie Database and Wikipedia are to be believed, she had a really fascinating background. She was born in 1862 during the Civil War. And in 1926, when she was 64, she entered the University of California and graduated 6 years later with her BA degree. And it was in 1940 that she went to Hollywood and began acting. So, she was starting acting in her 70s, and she was known for a number of roles from films such as Come and Live with Me from 1941, where she played the grandmother of James Stewart. She also played Madame Zimba in The Son of Dracula in 1942. And this was all in her 70s. So people, hey, it's never too late to start. So anyhow, those are my thoughts about the movie The Street of Chance from 1942. This was a really enjoyable crime film with Burgess Meredith and Claire Trevor, and it's worth checking out.